Cranfield University, with support from AHDB, continue to develop best management practices for asparagus. If you want to know where your roots are and how big the root engine is in your fields to aid decision making, you can participate by sampling your fields as explained in the following video. Before you start coring, ensure that you have the correct tools and personal protective equipment on hand. Sampling should take place in February or March, as ideally carbohydrate content also needs to be tested. Sampling therefore needs to take place pre-harvest when the root carbohydrate is at the maximum level.
For the specified field, the first step is to mark out 5 random sampling locations within each field. Next, you need to mark out your coring positions. Marking out can be done using the marking flags provided, or, for example, a road marking spray. You will need to sample 2 plants at either side of a central wheeling position. 5 to 7 sampling points, depending on the ridge spacing, should be marked out between the 2 plants. The depth of the root auger core is 15 centimeters. Soil samples need to be collected from 3 depths, 0 to 15, 15 to 30, and 30 to 45 centimeters. If the field is more than 1 year old, a sample at 45 to 60 centimeter depth will also be needed.
When using the corer, use a rotating action whilst pushing down with your body weight to push the corer into the soil to the required depth. The studs on the shaft of the corer indicate 15 centimeter depth intervals. You may need to strike the corer boss to achieve the required depth, particularly in the wheelings. When removing the corer from the soil, use your legs and not your back to avoid injury. Use a 2-person lift when appropriate. Insert handle and rotate to extrude the sample into the appropriately labelled sample bag. Remove excess soil from the corer mechanism on a regular basis, as excess soil may prevent the locking pin being inserted correctly. It is essential that the locking pin is inserted to avoid damage to the root corer. The next step involves preparing the root samples, which should be separated from the soil in the field. Asparagus produces storage roots and secondary feeder roots. It is the storage roots greater than 1 mm in diameter that need to be collected. These are to be placed in the sample bag appropriate to the location and depth. Where no asparagus roots are present, do not dispose of the sampling bag. Instead, leave it empty and return it with the other samples to Cranfield. It will then be recorded as a 0 value for that location and depth.
There are various ways to measure the ridge profile. You can attach a string to the base of the plant on both sides of the ridge so it is taut. Then use a ruler or a tape measure to measure the ridge depth at 20 cm intervals from the crown zero line. Measure the ridge profile 3 times in each of your fields.
A handful of soil from each of the 5 sampling locations should be taken at 0.3 metre distance from the crown zero line at the 15 to 30 centimetre depth interval. You may need to store your roots before sending them to be analysed at Cranfield. If so, they should be stored in a normal household refrigerator at 4 degrees centigrade. They should not be frozen. The samples should be posted to Cranfield University using the pre-addressed sampling kit box. The route map will be sent back to you so that you can use it to guide your soil management and cultivation practices. Carbohydrate values will also be sent back to you. You can use these values as a guide to estimate potential yield and also to indicate carbohydrate recovery from the previous season. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact the Cranfield research team using the on-screen details.